Hello everybody, today I'm just going to go over with you the awesome buffs that are actually coming to Companion Druid. So just when you thought we couldn't get any more buffs with things like Stormscrow's aspect and stuff like that, they actually did even more from the PTR. So let's go ahead and hop on into that. So first off, we have Stormcrow's aspect. So this got doubled. Go down here, you can see it does 60 to 100%. It was only doing 50% on the PTR, so they actually went ahead and doubled this. That means when you have it on an amulet, it's going to go up to 150%, which means we are only getting 75% on the PTR. So we already are getting a 75% damage buff here. Next up, the next awesome Companion Druid change is casting a Companion skill is now going to give us 20% increased damage from our Untamed Legendary node. Before, all it did was give us +4 ranks to all of our companion skills, but this stacks up to 80%. So now all of a sudden we're already at 155% increased damage. And then if you look over here at the Lust for Carnage node, this is going to be relevant for wolves. Oh my gosh, I can't type. Critical strikes with werewolf skills are now going to deal 50% increased damage and restore 2 spirit. Now keep in mind this is going to only happen on casted skills, I believe. I don't think this is going to apply to the passive attacks because typically it did not. I think I was only able to get this to work before on the actual casted skill, but it's still a 50% increased damage buff to our wolf active if you're playing wolf companion druid. The next thing we have is fix an issue where the druid legendary node's devastation and thunderstruck did not function. So that means 60% damage buff. Again, because Stormcrow's aspect changes our ravens into a storm skill, Storm's companion turns our wolves into a storm skill. So boom, both of those are getting 60% damage buff. Unfortunately, Poison Creeper is going to fall behind. It is really just not as good as the other companion skills anymore until they make a special legendary aspect for it, like they did with ravens, right? So that being said, so Raven's damage increase, Untamed damage increase, Thunderstruck damage increase, and then they also did some minor damage increases. So one with nature. We go down here and you can see that it is going to deal 60% instead of 50. That's another 10%. So if you're keeping track of all the numbers I've thrown out, assuming that Thunderstruck actually works and there's no bugs or anything like that, you're talking about currently a 215% damage increase. With one with nature, it's now going to go up to 225%. We then go to our Ancestral Guidance. Ancestral Guidance also got buffed by 10%. So now you're sitting at 225%. So why is this so relevant? Because you have to remember that in the campfire chat today, they said they are going to significantly reduce the multiplicative damage gained from glyphs. So right now, they give around 20 to 30%. So for numbers' sake, we're going to overestimate and assume the loss is bigger than what it could potentially be. We're going to say it's 30% going down to 10% because the 66% reduction in multiplicative damage seems like a significant in my mind, right? So that means since we can only have 5 boards, that every build in the game is going to lose roughly 100% multiplicative damage. Well, Ravens, just from these changes here, are actually getting 230% damage, which means that they're actually gaining over what they had on the PTR. So Ravens is actually going to end up being stronger than what we saw on the PTR, at least theoretically, right? We'll see. Now the one thing is that they're reverting the willpower change, so it's going to be interesting to see how that affects things. But right now on paper, I'm fairly certain that Ravens is just stronger than what it was on the PTR, and that is also going to be the same for wolves. And then I think Poison Creeper might be a little bit weaker, but I think it's going to end up just breaking even and being exactly the same as what we saw in the PTR. So that's actually pretty wild, because if all the other builds are losing a bunch of damage and we're not, and we're actually just gaining damage, you know, obviously that's going to raise up how well these builds do in relation to other builds. Now, I don't think that any of these builds are going to be S tier, because I think that Spiritborn, there's going to be some crazy Spiritborn build, like Payback Spiritborn is kind of looking insane to me personally, but I do think that, you know, Wolf Companion and Ravens are both going to be solid A-tier builds to play, and I actually think Ravens is going to be very fun to play as a farming build because it actually has good AoE, whereas Wolves, that's kind of the big thing that holds it back from ever being in S tier currently, is that it doesn't have a good way to spread its damage. On the PTR, I don't want to say it has like, it probably has the highest DPS out of, it might have the highest single target DPS, not necessarily single target burst like Bone Spirit Necro. But yeah, I think it might actually have the highest single target DPS in the game right now. But the thing is that doesn't really matter. Like, it doesn't matter unless you can actually spread that damage across the whole screen. That's why Lightning Spear was so good, is it had crazy DPS, and then it also could just delete the whole screen, right, in the current live server. Now, Lightning Spear is actually getting nerfed. Again, they're capping the amount of Lightning Spears down to 12, so that's kind of unfortunate. So that build's still going to be good. It's just not going to be, like, probably godlike like what it was, I would imagine. But who knows? I might be wrong about that. That build's crazy. But, yeah. So those are going to be some of the main changes. Now that I've went over that, I want to go over real quickly just the runes. Now, Spirit Wolves, I was able to actually find out towards the end of the PTR that this does, in fact, you know, increase your damage from Shepherds. So these do count with Shepherds, so I'd say that this makes this kind of the meta thing to take with Companion Druids. And then they nerfed Warcry, and they also nerfed Petrify. So Petrify no longer gives the critical strike damage, and it now uses base Warcry instead of enhanced Warcry, so you don't get as much of a damage bonus out of this anymore. I still think I'm going to go Warcry and Spirit Wolves, but the only one I think that's 100% mandatory right now is Spirit Wolves. I could be wrong. Maybe Warcry is still mandatory, but I think Spirit Wolves is going to be pretty solid, unless that turns out to be a bug, and then whenever we get on the live servers, it doesn't actually increase your damage from Shepherds. The reason why I was able to know that it increases your damage from Shepherds is because I put on the new Mythic Unique chest piece, and it just perma-spawned them, and I was just able to very visibly see that my damage went up by a decent amount when all those were out. So, but, you know, who knows, you know, maybe you're not able to get out as many as you want for it to be worth it. You never know. We'll have to test it out and see. But right now, Spirit Wolves and Warcry are at the forefront of my mind when it comes to runes. Also, if you did not know this, but this is pretty relevant, but Petrify was not actually applying to minions. So I actually had a commenter point this out to me, and it makes sense because personally, like, Petrify on paper seemed like it should be good, but like, I didn't even run an ult skill in a lot of my builds for quite a while just because it didn't seem like it was good. And like Petrify, I didn't really care so much about the damage bonus. I actually just liked that it stunned things. Like, that's really what I liked about it. But now, the bonus critical strike damage is going to apply to the damage done to your companions. So this is going to make it better to use while you're leveling up before you get Mjolnir Ring. I do think Mjolnir Ring is going to end up being, you know, kind of that S tier, like, you know, must have in the companion build, because it gives you 100% increased damage to Cataclysm, and Cataclysm gives you easy access to Vulnerable, which is also super good. So yeah, but we'll end up seeing how things go. Who knows, maybe they change how Stormcrow's aspects affects Ravens. You never know, but right now Ravens and Wolves are looking pretty darn good. I think I'm actually going to start Ravens, weirdly enough, whenever Vessel of Hatred comes out. I think that's going to be the build that I focus on, because I think that that has the potential to do really well with very, very little uniques. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.